anybody wants to put stuff in the chat for questions, please do, and keep doing the sharing, because we will then be able to share that out amongst everybody. So don't worry if you can't get the link because you're sitting on a mobile phone somewhere or whatever it may be. But just use the gathering at. We're trying to reduce my inbox exploding, which you can imagine it has been. So please just use the gathering at ruralmobility.scot email address, and we can help put you in touch with whoever you would like to. But as I say, you've got the short straw for me because you've now got session 2, which I am going to be talking about. The individual, Ben Coulson, that was meant to be chairing today, is doing some official duties given the situation at the moment, so is unable to join us. So he asked if I would step in. So I'm going to be joined by, we haven't got everybody that was advertised because of obviously things have got in the way, but we've got Rachel, we've got Andy, and we've got Jonathan. So we are talking about decarbonisation, and Alex is about to put in the chat a link, which I think is a really important document that was produced by the CILT, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, last year about rural and transportation and decarbonisation. As we know, the subject gets battered around a lot. But what does it actually mean? And we need to keep everything very practical. So I'm going to pass over to Rachel, who can then pass to Andy, who can then pass to Jonathan, and they can have a conversation about decarbonisation from their perspective. So Rachel, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Hi, folks. I'm Rachel Murphy. I'm Director for Scotland with COMO UK. That's Collaborative Mobility UK, and we're the public body for shared transport for public benefit. So I work predominantly with Scottish Government, with some of my colleagues who are on the call today. And we really look at ways in which we can all benefit from better access to shared transport, whether that be car sharing, ride sharing, bike sharing, cargo bikes, etc. And we are particularly focused at the moment on a couple of new areas. So looking at demand responsive transport, which, as we know, has brilliant applications in rural communities. And we are also working on rail, with ScotRail becoming nationalised. And as I say, some of my colleagues are on the line today. So if there are areas of our work that interest you, then please do pop a message to one of us privately. And of course, we'll follow up with you. I think thinking about decarbonisation links so brilliantly into the 6 asks, because everyone in the 6 asks from SRITC to me have a real call over into decarbonisation. I think when I was prepping for the session, the word I kept coming back to, and can be overused, is holistic, because transport in and of itself cannot be the total deliverer of so much of this stuff. You know, there's no logic in giving everybody all of these transport modes and then moving the GP surgery 3 towns away. So we also need to work with health, we need to work with education, and I think holistic attitudes is what I kept coming back to. And you know, I know we've spoken at other SRITC events before about the application of 15-minute neighbourhoods in a rural context, and you know, for a lot of us, the practicalities of it can be laughable, but I think there is something that we've seen in some of the work that we've seen communities delivering that has that application across of the ideas around 15-minute neighbourhoods, maybe rather than the practical application. But we often see in rural communities that facilities are based at that local level, and so those longer journeys are reduced. And I think the role of shared in that can be really crucial as well. A couple of sort of stats from COMO's research that we've done previously are that in Scotland, car clubs can offer a 10-car replacement. So for one car club vehicle, you can see a displacement of 10 cars. Now that, from a decarbonisation point of view, is remarkable, both in terms of the fuel efficiency, but also in the need to make cars in the first place. I expect, you know, if we look at that in a rural area, those numbers may drop. It may not be as high as 10, but even if it's 5, what a remarkable statistic that would be. One of the examples that I think I would really want to go into in more detail in May is we have a member of ours who offer community services called Radio City, and they offer some e-bikes, they have some cars, and they are building at the moment a community mobility hub. Now, they're not necessarily sort of rural in an extreme sense, but they are effectively deserted by quite a lot of public transport. And what's been remarkable watching them is the extent to which they've done it for themselves. And I think that's what we keep coming back to at SRITC, is giving rural communities the space, the funding, the opportunity to do this stuff for themselves. So I think that's an example from me that I'm really excited to go into more detail about in May. And at the pace they're moving, goodness knows what they'll have achieved by May. But I'll hand over to Andy, who I'm sure has some brilliant examples he can share as well.
Hey, thanks, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. I'm Andy, also known as Go Upstream. I'm a one-person organization working with people who are disabled, disadvantaged, and excluded by the services and systems that we've built already. Transport decarbonisation is obviously vital and urgent, but I wonder about how we're going about it, the language we use and the approach that we're taking. And I echo Rachel's point there about the need to be holistic about this. How we travel is going to provide some of the biggest individual climate positive choices we can make. But what if some of those choices aren't available to us? If there isn't clear information to plan our journey, if I don't feel safe standing at the bus stop, if I can't find a suitable toilet or a place to rest along the way, that choice might not even be open to me, even if the bus is electric. So I think we've got a bunch of challenges ahead of us, but there's a couple that I've been focusing on recently. The first, I think, is the mismatch between the mobility related policies and innovations that we've got and our actual day-to-day experience. So we're surrounded by frameworks for decarbonisation and strategies and zero emission vehicle pathways and funding processes, but they focus on transport and the actual experiences that people have, which is planning and navigating a complex series of environments and services and experiences, and sometimes transport to get from A to B. We call those journeys. In addition to this, I think we're also lacking a vision. Do we actually know what we want a low carbon world to look like? And what will people need in order to take part? If we don't know, then we won't know if we've achieved it. And how do we turn the technical into stories that add up to that vision so that we can all work towards it? So I'm bringing together disabled people to consider the low carbon services, systems and policies and innovations that are being planned right now. Not to talk yet again about the challenges and barriers that people have, but to bring people's experience and expertise to the question, have we made them inclusive enough? If not, here are some ideas based on our real experience. And then we're imagining what a journey might look like if they included those more inclusive versions. And I think by putting these stories together, we can come up with entire visions of entire journeys that that we can work towards, that then people can use to design policies and innovations and services as we go forward. So we're aiming to create a vision for more inclusive low carbon journeys. We can't create a transport network that is cleaner but continues to exclude. But we do need those decarbonisation strategies. We need those zero emission pathways, but we need to surround them and infuse them, I think, with the human experience and put the technical challenges into context. It feels like we've got one opportunity to do this. We've got one chance. So I'm happy to chat with anyone who's interested in helping us to make this happen as soon as possible. I'll put some links in the chat. Thank you. And I'll hand over to Jenny, I've forgotten.
Jonathan, and then it's Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Andy. So good morning, everyone. Jonathan Chatfield. I would like to just, I think, add my word of thanks to those who've already said kind of well done to Jenny and Alex and others for pulling all this together, because yeah, hugely challenging to make that switch at this late stage, but really well done for getting us all together this morning. So yeah, Jonathan Chatfield, I'm head of policy at the Rail Delivery Group, and have spent my entire career in the rail industry. So if it comes to trains, then I guess there might be questions coming my way when it comes to May. I worked for a train operator for 10 years, then for Network Rail, and now work for a Rail Delivery Group. And I think the things that I'm looking to bring in May to the conversation discussion. So I'm responsible for a group called the Station Strategy Group. So a lot of my work when it comes to rail is focused on rail stations. So looking at the role that the station plays in the customer journey, how the station can be better integrated, and the whole sort of decarbonisation agenda and how that impacts upon railway stations as well. We've got about 2,500 stations across the UK, obviously within Scotland, a big chunk of those, and we've got representation on our station strategy group from Scotland, but looking to really learn from this great group of people that's going to be joined together in May about what we should and could be doing to do more in that space. So I work quite closely with Department for Transport, with government, helping to shape policy. And we produced last year as well, and I'll touch on this in May, a sustainable stations best practice guide. So I'm going to look to bring some of that to the conversation as well. And then the last thing I was going to say, I think on the 6 big asks, I think, really resonated with me when those were put on the screen earlier. I think the one about leadership was the one that I focused in on. I think leadership then, if you've got the right leadership, can bring in so many of those other asks in terms of innovation and funding and other things. And for me, leadership is about being proactive. I think it's about not waiting for something to happen, but really proactively looking for ways that we can go in and help shape policy and not take those knockbacks. We all get knockbacks, don't we, and challenges, and you can't do that here. And it's about looking for a different way to approach it. So I think there's lots we can learn in May, and really looking forward to it. And we'll hand over to Jeff at that point.
Hi, thank you. Thanks very much for having me. My name's Jeff Pyro. I'm the local plan manager for Rother Council. We're down on the south coast. You've probably heard of Hastings. We sort of surround the Hastings area, and we remain a very rural area. I think I'm here to give you a sort of real world example of a planning authority who's looking to use the local plan to decarbonise as much as possible. And I think my connection to you guys is that I've been really interested in the work that's been happening up in the Scottish Highlands and Islands, and you're ahead of us in what you're doing. But we have similarities in that we are a very rural area with lots of small dispersed communities. And if we continue a plan in the way that we have before, we'll just continue to encourage and require people to drive to access services and schools and work, and nothing will really change. So we're just at the start of our journey, and hopefully I'll have more to tell you in May, actually. So that in some ways the postponement's quite useful for me. But we're looking at how our small places can connect to larger places with railway stations, and how we can create a spatial distribution that helps that to be achieved, which helps to support better buses, hopefully, and better community hubs as well. They're the 2 key issues we're looking at the moment.
Fab, thank you guys, really useful and very practical as well. And the bit that I would champion is the role of goods and people as well, and the report that I put in the link earlier on about combining the asset for goods. And I know that's something close to many people's hearts when we were also talking about drones earlier on, is actually, can the car or the vehicle or the bus, the post bus, be used with parcels or other things. Very quickly before I go to Duncan Bryden, before we go for a coffee and a scavenger hunt and then come back again, where is Linda? Because I can't see her on my screen. Linda Bamford, do you want to shortly, I appreciate that you might want to say quite a bit on this matter, but shortly just put your question forward to Andy and maybe any others that are on the call widely on this point.
Yes, I'm here.
Linda Bamford, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Go for it.
Yeah, it was just to put the question, when Andy was speaking about that engagement with disabled people about their transport needs, there is a wealth of work that's done. I think at this point, if we go back to disabled people and say we don't understand their transport needs, then we haven't been listening for the past couple of years. It's about the leadership and it's about the action. We know what the problems are. Disabled people organisations in Scotland have been engaging and holding webinars, surveys, polls, to find out what they need in terms of an accessible public transport system, and as they switch to more sustainable and greener modes. The issue is that we know that, but nothing has been done to progress that. And I think we can even see the kind of slowness of the progress through the Reduces Inequality pillar of NTS2, and also through, we're coming just to the end of the 6th year of the accessible travel framework, and I don't think for many disabled people it's any easier to get a bus or connect between a bus and a train. So there's something there that really needs leadership, and it really needs a commitment to make a difference. I don't think we need to engage anymore to understand where public transport is failing disabled people. And I think there's an apathy and a weariness that why do we need to tell you again? Nothing's changed. The DPOs in Scotland know what needs done. They've repeated what needs done. They've put forward reports with recommendations about what needs done. We actually just need to see action rather than back in another look at consultation to find out what we already know.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Linda's got a different background. I usually like seeing her background. She's got a different background and she wears many different hats as well. But as an action, Linda, can I put it back on you? Can you send us after today some links that we can share with everybody so that they can go to the resources that you're talking about, so that we're not recreating the wheel, because that's what SRITC is all about, is sharing that knowledge and stopping that recreating happening when we don't need it to happen. So are you game for that, Linda?
Yeah, well, and I think I shared with Andy a couple of weeks ago when he came along to do a short presentation to Max about one of the big resources which will hold everything, which is easier than inundating your inboxes with numerous emails, is the Accessible Travel Hub that's hosted by Disability Equality Scotland. The Accessible Travel Framework Steering Group and all its stakeholder members put their information and reports and recommendations onto the Accessible Travel Hub. So what I will do is share the link to the Accessible Travel Hub. And if you go on that, there's a wean of information you can look through at your leisure with different reports and different recommendations that have all been done over the past 5 years.
That's going to link very neatly. Thank you to Duncan. I know Paul Lindop's just put a link in the chat and something Mark might just pick up after coffee with regards to charging points and tourism, etc. But unfortunately, Paul, the link doesn't work. So if you could find another version to post it in over coffee, that would be appreciated. But before we go for the scavenger hunt and coffee, I've mentioned Tomatin Hub, which we were going to visit. And I've got Duncan here and I can't see him on the screen. So Duncan, please just unmute yourself. I've got 4 pages of people on my screen at the moment, so you can appreciate why I can't find you. Duncan, would you just like to explain what the Tomatin Hub is, what it offers and how it's come to be, just very briefly, before I then set everybody on a task? Duncan, wherever you are.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. It's Tomatin, for those that don't know where it is halfway between Aviemore and Inverness. We're in the classic sort of accessible rural areas, quite close to a large city, and that in Inverness, and that creates problems. We have the A9 running right through the middle of the community. We have the Highland Main Line running through the community. We have National Cycle Route 7 running through the middle of the community. Mobility for us is a means to an end. I think we need to sort of focus on that. And we're facing a whole range of challenges, I suppose. The railway is one. I was interested what Jonathan was saying about stations. We find Network Rail extremely difficult to deal with. And we would like to reopen the station. It runs right through the village. We have an old station, but it can't be opened. And the hub is intended to try and provide a focus where people can gather, and also to build capacity within the community, because we've based our village shop there, and the average village shop needs about 1,000 people to thrive, but we only have a population of about 700, so we need additional visitors coming in. So we've tried to sort of centralize all these things along with a new hall and cafe to try and make these things viable, because a lot of the challenges of mobility is making it actually viable and having enough people in the right place who want to move around. And this also influences the future of the village in terms of the survival of the school. So we have a big enough population to support that. So mobility is just one part of a whole network. And I suppose my sort of parting shot really is, how do we get sort of large organizations like Network Rail, Transport Scotland to speak to small rural communities, and not just to impose things. We just have a new addition in the village that is for the potential dualling of the A9, and we have this wonderful sort of bus stop, lights, new road, but it's almost in the middle of nowhere. You can't actually get to it. And it just seems sort of crazy. There's this lack of joined up thinking. The railway guys don't talk to the road guys, and then the cycle guys don't talk to the railway guys, and it just makes life very difficult for communities. And I'm really interested in practical solutions on the ground. rather than yet more policies and research studies. You know, we want to get something done on the ground, and the hub is an attempt to try and do that. I'll finish there, although I just want to, one last point. Behind me, if people can see the picture, is Thomas Telford's bridge across the River Spey, dating from 1814. And I think that sort of summarizes a lot of the infrastructure we're dealing with and how old it is. So, and it's still in pretty good order, but relying on infrastructure that was built, you know, before the Battle of Waterloo really presents some of the sort of challenges that we have to face.
Thanks, Duncan. So that's one of the trips you can go and do on the Wednesday afternoon. So you can see it in real world, because we talk about it all the time, but it'd be really great if people want to go and see Duncan and get a cup of coffee. On which note, coffee. That's what happens next before you get Mark Tate and the team. So for those of you that have not had the experience of a scavenger hunt over the last 18, 20 months of online, this is your chance to go and put the kettle on, not check your emails, put the kettle on, come back, and you're going to bring back with you things that are in your house, your office, your garden, your car, wherever you may be, things that stand for Botagarten. So something that begins with a B, and if you want to do the whole of Botagarten, it's quite a number of things that you need to go and find in your house or your office, but go and find something beginning with a B, something beginning with an O, and something beginning with a G, and bring it back, and then we're going to ask you to photograph it. And we've done this over the last couple of years, and it's a great way just to get you moving, so you're not sitting in front of the screen while you're waiting for the kettle to boil. So we will see you. Do not switch off, do not let go of your internet connection. Mine's still stable. I don't need to run to Mark Tate's office. So I'll see you at 5 minutes past 11. Ready, set, scavenge, go, run, go. You.